Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Ari, and today we're going to have some more stories about our toxic life. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video, if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now without further ado, let's go. Today's first story. In this story, a novelist meets his girlfriend at a publishing company. Their relationship flourishes as he struggles with writer's block. When he falls ill, his girlfriend cheats, lying about his death to justify her infidelity. Confronted, she leaves. He gains custody of their daughter, rebuilds financially, and finishes his book. Now let's get into the story. My girlfriend and I met through a publishing company. She worked in the office headquarters, and I was on a tour of the building when my book was getting published. They expected me to have another book ready ASAP, and I was feeling optimistic about it. When I met her, she was impressed and flirted with me. Our first date was that night, and she moved in with me a year later. We stayed together over the next 8 years and had a daughter after 2 years together. During that time, I wrote my second book and started working on my third. I had other writing jobs too, but my third book was expected to sell even more than my first two, so I focused on it. However, I started to run out of ideas. My plot seemed off, and I couldn't figure out where to go next. I started second-guessing the whole thing, which really discouraged me because I had 3 years or more invested into it. My girlfriend was by my side, but she started to lose patience. She started trying to give me ideas or talk to me about it. I appreciated her attempt, but her ideas were terrible and not what I was going for. I kindly let her down repeatedly and started working on something else. She was actually mad at me for not working on the one that was closer to being done. Then I got sick. I got a type of infection in my blood that nearly killed me. I was hospitalized for about 3 months before I was allowed to go home, but I still needed my girlfriend's help. While I couldn't write, it was up to her to care for our daughter and pay her mortgage. Without financial assistance, she couldn't keep up. Our daughter was able to stay with her mom while she worked or spent time with the AP she found. While I was on bed rest, I heard her and my daughter arrive home. I looked forward to either of them coming upstairs to see me. I waited and waited, but I couldn't hear anything. Finally, my daughter came in and told me her mom told her they were going to Disneyland without me. Instead, with AP, she said his name, but I didn't know what she meant. I stood up with panic rising in my chest. I looked over the balcony to the living room and saw a man sitting on the couch. I yelled to ask who he was and made him jump. He stood up and looked scared and confused. He asked if I was her boyfriend. After I said yes, and he told me she told him I was dead, I was shocked. He apologized and left without a word to my girlfriend. She came into the room when she heard the front door and saw me. I was furious with her and asked what the heck was going on. I told her our daughter said they were going to Disneyland with AP, and he told me she said I was dead. She was furious at me. She told me she would grow into an old woman as she waited for me to adequately provide for our family. So she had no choice but to go sleep with him and lie about me. On top of that, she also didn't use the money he gave her to pay the mortgage, so we were in financial trouble. I was in financial trouble, so within a few months of my absence, sickness, and dependency on my girlfriend, she had cheated on me and put me in debt, even though she could have paid the bills. I was a fool for ever trusting her to be my significant other. Their bags were already packed, but now that AP knew the truth, she had nowhere to go besides her parents. Once she realized that, she started to backpedal. I stopped her, telling her to quit while she was ahead. She already convinced me she was worthless, and I told her to follow through with her decision to leave me. She bitterly took her daughter to her parents' house, much less fun than Disneyland. I was able to get our phone records, along with my recount of meeting AP in my own living room. It was enough to prove she cheated on me and put me in debt. I won custody of our daughter because my girlfriend had no room in her parents' house for her. I worked hard and took out a loan to save my house, and within a year, I finished my third book. Today's second story. In this story, Obi discovered his wife cheating with her ex-husband. Despite their lavish lifestyle funded by him, she deceived him and attempted to flee the country with her ex. He canceled her privileges, leaving her stranded. Her family, disappointed in her actions, refused support, and she spiraled into drug addiction, now living in a low-income apartment. Now let's get into the story. I, 45 male, was married to my wife, 39 female, for just 6 years. When we dated, she fell hard for me. I was, and still am, a pilot. Through my company, I get flight privileges and free tickets to anywhere. My wife also had a premium account since she flew with me on several occasions. Within the time we were dating and married, we went to 8 different countries. As an extravagant birthday present to one of her friends, my wife hosted a girls-only trip to Paris. She was living the life without having to work at all. I think this life of luxury, thanks to me, made it easier for her to bash her ex-husband all the time and continually express how glad she was to be rid of him. He was actually the one that filed for divorce against her. But that's just one of the things my wife lied to me about. I noticed that my wife was still connected to her ex via social media. I figured she wanted him to see her updates about how great our life was together. I didn't really care. That was the only thing I noticed before day. Several of my flights were canceled because 3 of the airline's planes needed inspection before their next flight. I decided not to tell my wife I was coming home early to see what she was doing with her day. Since she didn't have a job, I was surprised to find 2 cars in our driveway. When I entered the home, I didn't hear anything. I went upstairs, and that's when I heard noises. I felt something overtake me, knowing my wife was in our bedroom with another person. The door was locked, so I grabbed a hammer from the hallway closet. I bashed around the doorknob as my wife screamed until the door swung open. They were bug-eyed in bed, completely uncomfortable and scared for their lives. She was in our bed with the ex-husband. She so boldly bashed. I screamed names at her and at God. I told her she was a liar, and I told him he was exactly the piece of crap my wife said he was. He got dressed quickly and left. I wish I knew what he was thinking, entering my home to sleep with his ex. He must have been a stupid idiot, and he's lucky I'm not a fighter. My wife then tried to touch my shoulder while holding the sheet around her and asked me not to do anything rash. I pulled away and said I was kicking her out the house. I told her I wouldn't consider repairing this relationship even if she was the last girl on earth. She was sobbing, but did her best to act like she could handle me dumping her. She started packing her bags as if she could recover from this. In another room, I called her mother and told her everything. In turn, she told her father and the rest of her family. My wife left in her car without knowing that everyone knew what she'd done. She went to AP's house where she checked her phone for any messages for me. She found none. But she did find a ton of messages from her family. They were scolding her for cheating on me, the greatest thing to ever happen in her life. They called me an honorable provider and said she was a moron for what she did. It was clear that they felt she should have left her ex in the past, and they wouldn't be supportive of her. After this, she left a voicemail for me saying I ruined her life by refusing to forgive her. She decided to leave the country with AP. So with their bags packed, they went to the airport. At the ticket counter, my wife tried to swipe the platinum flight card I provided for her, but it failed to go through since I had it canceled just 30 minutes earlier. She then immediately called me, telling me that her card was not working anymore and that AP was no longer interested in flying with her. I guess he had a sudden change of heart about their spontaneous rekindling. Without any other options, my wife left the airport security office alone in her car packed full of luggage for her parents' house. She begged either of them to let her move back in, but they only stared at her with disappointment and turned her away. They couldn't resist letting her move back in after she was homeless for a few nights. Her mother couldn't believe her daughter did this after bashing her ex so much. So she called me. I told her everything that happened, how I felt, and how my ex thought I was wrong for failing to forgive her. With that, her mother told me she wanted to kick her out and asked how I felt about the idea. I told her to do it because my wife foolishly thought she could start a new life with AP. After telling me what a terrible person he was, after vowing her commitment and love to me, she shouldn't get handouts from anyone. Look at what my spoiling did to her. Her head blew up with entitlement without any respect towards me, even though I was the one that allowed her to think this way. Her mother was convinced and kicked her out that same night. It's been 2 years and my ex has since found herself and her daughter a low-income apartment and a drug habit. Today's third story. In this story, Opie, betrayed by his cousin and girlfriend, he discovers them in bed together. He swiftly ends the relationship and severs contact. 3 years later, his cousin invites him to his wedding. Despite initial anger, he attends, delivering a scathing speech. While initially feeling vindicated, therapy helps him cope. Despite struggles with dating, he emerges stronger and more cautious, finding solace in personal growth. Now let's get into the story. I once looked up to my cousin. I thought he was a great guy and we were close like brothers. I was also dating a girl. I was deeply in love with her and planned to marry her someday. I thought my life was perfect. One day I came home early because a colleague offered to cover my shift. I was pretty tired, so I accepted and went home. Arriving home, I found them in my bed having intimate. Both of them were shocked to say the least. I told them I wanted them to be gone by the time I got back and left the house. They were gone by the time I did get back, but she left me a note telling me she was sorry and to call her when I calmed down. I didn't call her. I texted her saying that I'd gather her things and drop them off at my cousin's in a few days and that she was staying with him now, not me. I followed through with that. It took about a week to transfer everything. Both of them tried to apologize, but I didn't have anything nice to say to them, so I said nothing. I just knocked on the door and handed the bags to whoever answered before leaving. My cousin called me multiple times to try to apologize, but I refused to accept it. 3 years have passed since then. I went no contact with them. I didn't bring it up to the rest of my family or any of their friends. I'm not sure why, I just didn't. I got a call from a number I didn't recognize, so I answered. It was my cousin. He sounded really happy and was acting like he hadn't destroyed my life. He explained he and my ex were getting married and he wanted me to be his best man. I was so angry that he had the utter gall to act like nothing was wrong and lost my temper, yelled at him, and called him names. Before hanging up, he sent me a text telling me the offer still stood, and if I didn't want to be his best man, then he just simply wouldn't have one. A few days passed by and I had an idea. I texted him back and apologized. I sent a paragraph of bullshit saying I was still angry, but this could be an opportunity for the three of us to heal and move past it. He was overjoyed and said he paid for everything and he'd help me pick out a suit if I wanted, which I accepted because I sure as well wasn't going to spend any money on his stupid wedding if I could help it. The wedding day came. I had spent the week prior writing a speech, putting all the negative feelings that had bottled up over the years into words. On paper, the wedding was pretty good. I'm sure one of them had some nice well-paying job or something, because they must have spent a decent bit of money on this wedding for how nice it was. Our entire family was there, as was a decent chunk of my ex's family. Eventually, the time for my speech came. I just remember feeling really nervous as it built up to it, and my voice kept faltering when I was reading it out. But I didn't, and still don't care. At least I got it out. I explained what these two horrible people had done to me. I called them the worst names I could think of and wished them the worst. Then I left. I was expecting some kind of dramatic moment from all the guests, gasps of shock and all that, but there was none of that. Everyone was completely silent. On my way home, I got a call from my ex that I had ruined the wedding and both of them were so upset. And she asked me why I do this. She told me after I had left that a lot of the people they had invited just couldn't look at them the same anymore. I told her that they deserved it for what they'd done to me, and everything I'd said in the speech was true. Since then, I've gotten several calls and texts from others in my ex's family offering support and telling me how sorry they were that I experienced that. I'm not sure if I feel better having done this, but it did bring me great catharsis. When people were telling me the wedding was ruined, at least now they felt at the very least a fraction of what they've made me feel. I was struggling a lot, and I'd just gone back to simply functioning like I was before the wedding, after I came down from getting my own back. I don't at all regret what I did, and I still feel satisfied that I got payback. I was making plans to take my own life after what my ex did to me. I hadn't told anyone, for obvious reasons, of my mom, uncle, and cousin, the same cousin whose wedding I ruined. He came to me and told me they'd pay for a private counselor, since the mental health department of the NHS is under-equipped, to say the least. I went to therapy, found a counselor who was very helpful. He taught me a lot. I got diagnosed with PTSD caused by the discovery of the affair. He's been a big help and has encouraged me to give casual dating a try to build confidence in myself and get used to rejection as a normal part of life. I signed up for a few dating sites, although I'm avoiding Tinder like the plague. My counselor specifically suggested I stay as far away from Tinder as I possibly can. I've not been very successful in that avenue, but it's pretty much in line with what I was expecting. I've talked to a few people and even got a date scheduled, but she stood me up and ghosted me, which hurt. I'm doing much better now, mentally, than I was before. In a way, I feel like what I went through has made me much stronger as a person and has taught me on how to be careful with the woman I choose to be with.